We're live.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the August 18th, 2025 GOC Operations Committee meeting. The last meeting we had was in April. We did take some time off for July as well as for budget and hiring of a new county manager. And we are back in business, continuing our conversation with the BACs. And can I get approval of the last year? It feels like last year. Can I get approval of the April 21st meeting minutes that were very thorough?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
April 21st meeting minutes have been approved. Kick it off to Mr. Saunders to get us started back on BACs.
Sure, if you'll pull up the slides, please. So this is should be our kind of final stretch for discussing boards, authorities, and commissions. If we'll go to the next slide, we'll get a little history on this. The meetings go back to October of last year, and really you all identified several different things that you wanted to do, not only looking at their function and kind of standard procedures, but also talking about things like consolidation or reorganization of BACs, as well as compensation. And so a number of surveys have gone out and kind of had an iterative process around that. And so some relevant decisions that you all have recommended as a committee previously. In December, consolidated around compensating all locally appointed boards, authorities, or commission members at $25 a meeting per month maximum, which would have to be probably incorporated into the FY27 budget should the full commission approve it. Similarly, recommendation to restart the Land Bank Authority, which was accepted by the Mayor and Commission as a standalone recommendation. And then in our last meeting, we discussed some reorganization. So returning the Board of Appeals, or Construction Board of Appeals to the state, eliminating the language from 1991 around the Commission on People with Disabilities, since that scope is now under the HRC purview. Formalizing a role for a SPLOST, T-SPLOST Oversight Commission, but also having that as a single commission instead of standalone mayor's committees, and consolidating the 6 TAD advisory committees into a single oversight committee after their priority plans have been accepted by the commission. So while they're working on their unique district plans, they'll continue to work in their 6 committee format. So what that really leads, moving on to the next slide, is today we're going to be talking about the handbook. And one of our very earliest meetings, you all identified some goals for how the handbook should be updated. So it was last updated, I don't know, 8 years ago.
Sounds about right.
Quite a bit has changed for us in that time period, including how we conduct meetings, the ability to do some things virtually as needed. And so here you'll see kind of the overarching improvements that are needed. And so instead of going through that Frankenstein of a track changes document, which includes a lot of just minor text edits, what we'll do today is we'll take these topic by topic and highlight some of the language that's been added into that BAC handbook to accomplish this. So moving to the next slide. One of the things that y'all articulated as a goal was to enhance transparency around how our BACs do their work. And so have added in language here on 4 different pages, 5 different items. The first one talks about the use of public email, basically that the use of private accounts would be minimized. Similarly to the stipends, there would be, for some BACs that don't currently operate in this way, there will be a small cost to add those accounts to ACC Gov to have a proper email. The second is public notice. So making sure that all of our meetings have appropriate agendas published, that they're on the ACC Gov website. And then also if a BAC intends to go into executive session, because there's a very narrow ability or purpose for which the state identifies executive sessions, that they must notify the attorney's office at least one business day before doing so, so that the attorney's office, A, can verify that their intent is correct, and then they, B, attend that executive session and provide guidance if needed. And then the last is just speaking about open records. Is there anything y'all see on that particular set of slides, those text additions, that you feel like needs to be fleshed out or modified in any way?
I have a question. The first bullet point, could there be a possibility of setting up something through technology or an app where any communication within the BAC can be done on like a single thread, like Slack or something like that? I mean, Jeff, you probably know more about this kind of stuff. Like, I feel like it might make it more efficient. Cause I know being on the tree council, I'll get emails from the tree council and they like just start smashed into my pile of email. And there are long threads that I gotta figure out what the original like issue was.
Well, I mean, short answer is that, there may be some possibilities with that. I think one of the challenges with some of those things is that, I don't know that we're super well set up for open records issues related to those platforms at this time. And I know some are kind of very specifically not well designed for that. Where, with email address components through the website, like we have, our IT department is able to get through them. And I think what may solve some of those issues would be some of the things along the lines of, maybe some recommendations on how to, when you reply, you don't maybe necessarily need to reply to everything in there, that kind of thing. The other thing is that with the BACs, when they're set up, they usually do set up like a general email list for the members so that, and someone sends it to one, it will kind of go to everybody, but we just really haven't explored anything kind of beyond that from the and I will also say this though, too. I'm not in IT, but as you all know from commission meetings, our office often ends up being like, we stayed in a Holiday Inn Express the night before and become IT assistants, but, even with email, sometimes we have people that have challenges getting logged into that, and so I would maybe have some concerns about the setup for giving guidance on how to use a Slack system or anything, because we have such a wide range of people that are on the BAC, so that may be another concern, but I mean, we could certainly find out more about.
Yeah, I don't know what other technology is out there that can make inner communication.
I will say that Teams, which is a system that we use now, does have some functionality like that. And we can certainly talk to IT about some possibilities with that, and it may be that some want to explore that in those chats, as long as, those open records
Does that
issues.
necessitate setting up an email for each and every member? Like,
Not with.
I mean, that's our suggestion.
Right.
That's where I was going.
yeah,
Should we,
that just seems really cumbersome.
it is, but should we ask people to volunteer their time? Should all those individuals have ACC Gov email accounts? And what would that look like? And how much stress would that put on our IT department? I don't want to stress them more than they already stressed. So what would that look like if every BAC that we got set up is active?
So that's what that first bullet point is meant to accomplish. And so the direct answer is yes, Commissioner, it's my opinion that they should.
And we do that now, actually.
Yeah.
It's just that we don't, for some of them, for a lot of them.
All of them, they're saying they're not.
Yes, I mean, it's been a little more voluntary, which is part of this, but also the ones that are not under local purview, some of those have chosen not to, and that's kind of.
For example, let's say just like the health department. I know some of our commissioners on there, and they got email, but those people who are appointed, would they have our ACC Gov, or would they have the health department?
So
tier two, right?
tier two, so locally created and controlled, which the health department is not. They're state.
But, but it,
I think though, us who are a part of ACC, we have,
right,
but the other people on the health department, because they're quasi-government, they would not, because they're not,
Yeah.
right?
And potentially, if you think about an organization like the Tree Council or Keep Beautiful, where they have a designated body of members that are affirmed by the commission, but they also may have ex officios even from those groups. This policy, as I read it, would not extend to an ex officio having to have an ACC email address. They just need to know that any communication they receive on behalf of the BAC is subject to open records. And so one of the benefits of it being an ACC email address is it sets the expectation of where that communication will go, but also when there is an open records request, that is filtered immediately through IT. So it's not on Jeff or myself. Like if I get an open records request on my email, IT fires off all the relevant emails.
know that,
So it streamlines that we're not dependent upon that receiving party to do that work, or even be subject to a review about what is inclusive of the open records or is not. So it's a much cleaner approach. I don't know that we have the authority to mandate that it go up to state appointed PACs.
that's why Commissioner Taylor's point about the quasi. How do we communicate with those individuals? Like, I think Commissioner Wright is on the health department,
Right.
I believe. She may be on the commission, but then there's other people on that board. So how do we communicate with those? And we need to ask those people questions. 'Cause we actually had a situation where I was trying to get in touch, I did get in touch with Commissioner Wright. I thought the chairman of that board needed to be aware of what was going on and didn't know how to communicate with that individual.
So my understanding is if they're state created or even like part of a regional, we can't mandate they do anything. We may be able to help set up like the equivalent of like a listserv, but it requires somebody to attend to it, which would usually be their staff liaison. The other thing that we could look at is, I don't know, Jeff, well, I know that we have some landing pages for these on our websites, having their appropriate contact information.
Yes, and that's something that we've strived to do so that at least in theory, you would be able to find out who those members were. And some contact, at least for the chair,
That would help.
for that as well. And I
That would be
think,
helpful.
yeah, and I think we do for most all these, even the tier two. But there's still, probably a couple of gaps that we'll continue to look at.
Thank you.
And so Commissioner Lang, going back to that idea of like a single place for communication or even files. Teams is probably the best option we have of like an ACC Gov implemented thing, but even that requires some uptake. I think probably the best thing would be instead of mandating its use, if we orient our liaisons about what it can do. So if the BAC is seeking that level of support, they can deploy it.
And I would say too, with that, it does require an ACC Gov email address. And an ACC Gov email address is required to log in and take the training. And so that can be the bare minimum. And then if somebody wants to do something else within that system, they could.
So my concern is, mandating that these folks have a new email address. As someone who manages like 7 email addresses, and many of them get neglected and don't get checked. And with Microsoft, with Outlook, you can't have 2 email accounts open at the same time. You often have to switch, right? Totally shut down one, log on into another, or check it on another browser, and it's really cumbersome.
If you do it on web, I mean, there are some ways to do it. As someone who also has multiple ones, there are some ways to do that. But again, the other challenge that we have is that, with the training, it is specific to our network. And so there's not a way to log in and take that training without using our domain.
Okay. So we, okay,
That's the
so,
way it's set up now.
so the question I had was the online training, like who verifies that? Is it Is it sent to you? Is it sent to IT?
So what happens is that, I get an automated report, every couple of weeks on, so there's kind of a process right now when we get our new members, we send it to IT. We have kind of a shared spreadsheet. They create the account, then the liaison sends them the information about logging in and taking that information of those classes. And then every 2 weeks, I kind of get a report and it's listed by sort of BAC and the member, and then it shows like, here's the percentage they've completed or if they've completed it all. Actually, even if they've logged in. So it's like logged in and then 20, 40, 60, 80, 100% completed. And so we do get those reports.
Okay,
And that'll be, we have a slide specific to that online training coming up in 2. So let's jump to the slide about streaming, next slide. So this is an addition that has kind of evolved within our organization, especially when COVID came around. And it just comes down to, this says that it's an expectation of streaming, especially of the main meeting, but not subcommittee work. And Jeff, can you talk a little bit about what happens if there's technical difficulties?
Right, so part of it is that it is not a legal requirement, but again, an expectation. And, you know, unfortunately, or fortunately, a lot of these take place after hours. We don't really have sort of the capacity to do too much technical assistance, and it doesn't really fall under IT as well. And so what we've kind of said is almost a caveat, like, we'll help train you. We certainly, if we're around, or if I'm in the office or Stuart is, and we can help you with a problem, great. But sometimes there's a problem we can't fix at that time. And so in those cases, what we do suggest is somebody record it if they still can, and we'll put it up later. In some cases, we've had an instance where simply like there's no way we could physically do that at the time. But this is not designed to necessarily be the official record of the meeting. That is what the minutes are for, technically speaking. So this just kind of gives us an out if there's a problem with it. That may happen from time to time, although it's been pretty infrequent. And so that's kind of how we've approached it in terms of streaming. And we've set up some different places around in facilities to make it a little bit easier and have some more options. Now that people don't do as much stuff after hours kind of in here, they can go to cooperative extension, they could go to police department, they could go eventually to the airport, they can check out. We have owls they can check out. So we try to make it as easy as we possibly can without getting sort of overburdened with can't remember what the number was last year, but I want to say it was 300 and some.
And so what's shown here for page 13, is this effectively what's in practice now?
Yes.
That's just clarifying that this is our practice, but there will be bumps in the road. We can troubleshoot those as they come up.
okay,
All right, next slide does speak to training. So as we talked about, one thing that's evolved in our organization is there used to be like these kind of in-person trainings and they were difficult to coordinate. And now we can use our learning management systems to create online training. And so with that in mind, there's an expectation that that training be completed within 6 months. Not only does it go through things in this manual, but it also covers some of that risk and liability for ACC Gov about open records and open meetings again. So within this, it says that not only is training required, but that there would be an automatic termination if training is not completed, but that we would notify them at the 90-day mark. So basically 3 months in, you're going to get an update, about whether or not your training's been completed. That also creates an avenue if you need help or don't remember how to log on. But if it's not done at 180 days, that your appointment would be terminated. There is a process later on for an appeal on terminations.
okay, just question like, notification. So would you or staff notify the individual, or will the chair or the department head or whatnot?
I think it would
Notify.
be the liaisons for the group kind of using those lists that Jeff gets.
I would suspect that the liaison will probably notify the individual and maybe the chair in a way,
Okay.
just to keep them aware.
Next slide was some changes on membership. So a couple of things here. One is clarifying, right now, the availability for ACC Gov employees is fairly open-ended. What it says is that you shouldn't serve on a BAC that impacts your work. But I'm just gonna be frank, it's hard to not impact your work if you're voting at some point in this government. So what's recommended here is that unless explicitly identified in ordinance, ACC Gov employees would not be BAC members. So where do you see it identified in ordinance right now? You see it in places like the pension board, deferred comp board, where there's an intentional representative. There's also the tree council. I know the secretary is the forester, but that doesn't mean it has to stay that way. It just is at least codified in ordinance that that was intent. But if it doesn't say that, what you wouldn't see is myself, Jeff, or anybody else just applying like, oh, I'd love to be on the planning commission. So that's one thing. Another is restating or just clarifying that you must be a member or a resident of Athens-Clarke County, and that you can't have any past due obligations, which again is kind of practice. It just wasn't reflected in the manual or handbook. And then another thing that this body recommended on page 7 was that you shouldn't be represented on multiple tier 2 BACs. So you shouldn't be on planning commission and Athens in Motion, or, you know, try to get a more diverse representation there.
So when it comes to us as elected officials, I know some of tier 2 serve on because of what they are. Should we then, and now tier 2, be a part, should we be part of this membership, or should we, as elected officials, be a part of some of these BACs? And also, I would refer to you because, you know, one of the things that we've been told around now with other nonprofits, we can't be a part of, you know, because there may be where they may be asking us for money, so they want the commissioner involved.
Conflict of interest.
Right, so I would take the same way made with BACs, again, side of tier 2. If that's something that we may need to consider. And then maybe that's a commission, conversation, but,
Yeah.
I'm,
So do you
again,
think,
I was sort of related also a little bit, and just to maybe get a little bit of a legal opinion. I know other jurisdictions, other, municipalities, some of their elected officials are part of bodies, and I get that. But again, should that be from a unified government? Should that be something that we need, just to consider whether or not we as commission should be a part of those?
I mean, that's definitely something we can look at. I think, you know, without looking into it, without having a chance to have researched it, I think the answer is it kind of depends on what the commission wants. Because I know there are certain BACs where the authorizing ordinance or
Right.
resolution requires that there actually be.
Exactly, yeah.
The commission serve, either as a voting member or an ex officio member.
Like I'm an ex officio for Peace Corps.
Right.
I don't vote, I always say that. I'm just
Right.
there. And that could be, maybe we can still use that for maybe a commission being, maybe just be listening what's going on, be an ex officio, but same thing, let's take a look at it. I'm just curious, I'm not for or against, I'm just asking the question.
You're suggesting that we should be a part of a BAC?
No, should we be a part?
Should we be a part of a
Except for the
BAC?
ones that the ordinance, some ordinance to their point have said that
We should.
we should be, but these other ones, for example, the tree council.
Right.
Or some.
Or should it
other
just be
KACCB.
our decision?
Yeah,
Should
like,
we just decide, I want to be a part of the KCCB?
things. Right.
well,
I'm passionate about like solid waste,
You don't solid waste, I get it.
and I'm passionate about trees and y'all know I love my trees. So like, as a governing body, like we're the policymakers. I won't see any issue as for
Again,
us.
I'm not for or against, I'm just asking questions.
Or should it be on a
Here's-
volunteer
can I
basis?
offer you some advice between those two tiers? So let's start with tier 2, locally created and controlled. Right now, to my knowledge, outside of, again, an ordinance identified role like pension board or deferred comp, membership is a liaison. So for example, Commissioner Link, I've heard you speak about the tree council. You're not a voting member, but you attend as you can. You help to create that connection to the commission. But ultimately, those tier twos exist to advise you all, right? So if you're a member on an advisory board, to your point, like, couldn't we just decide? So I think that format works really well on a tier two, that it would mirror what's in staff. Unless it's explicitly in the ordinance, commission aren't members. When you think about tier one, they have different jurisdictional authority. So for example, the hospital authority can make very significant decisions that impact our community without the endorsements of Athens-Clarke County Unified Government. Now, there may be times that they want the county to come along as a partner. So when you think about tier ones, you get things like the Classic Center Authority, the Hospital Authority, the Downtown Development Authority, Health Department.
DFACS.
And in those cases, I would suggest that the membership was probably intentional.
Okay, yeah,
And so maybe what I'm hearing you say is this page 7, this original language, it says unless specifically identified by ordinance, ACC Gov employees may not serve on a BAC. You could also say employees and commissioners, right? And just make it inclusive of that.
Yeah.
but I don't want to Commissioner Davenport point if he likes being on.
Airport authority.
Ordinance.
Yeah, it is part of the order, solid waste.
Solid waste is, I'm just saying these other ones, that's not part of the ordinance.
Yeah, like we shouldn't like apply to be on the planning commission for Athens and Mobile.
Right,
something
exactly.
Like that.
Yeah, so yeah, like that. So that's all. Again, so I want to be clear.
Yeah, that's
I'm not
fine.
saying that we shouldn't. I'm just asking the question.
And also like future commissions, I know commissioners in the past were very active. They were like, and a part of everything. So we may not have that group of people in the future of commissioners who want to be a part of the multiple BAC. So, yeah.
Well, and if you go way back, if we think about former Commissioner Neesmith, he was prominent on the planning commission and then eventually ran for mayor and commission. It's not uncommon that BACs are people learning more about government, becoming interested in participating. If you clarified this, what it would be is like, well, if you're elected as a part of winning, you're now deciding on the planning commission item, so you don't need to be on planning commission any longer.
Yeah,
That space would need to be filled.
okay,
Yeah.
understand. Again, just food for thought.
And of course, too, the other aspect I would say is even, if it's just a expressed interest in something, of course, all the meetings are certainly public and streamed, and so, there's still opportunities for anybody that's interested in one of them to, attend, even if it's not an official role.
Would you all be comfortable modifying that first bullet point to be inclusive of Athens-Clarke County commissioners and employees? I mean, technically y'all are employees, but.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's what you think. I mean,
I would like to not include commissioners, but
I mean, I would expand it to say, all local elected officials. I mean, we get a state rep applying to be on a BAC. I'm not sure that's appropriate, or coroner or whatever,
Okay, that may,
Sure.
do we have any school board members that are currently on BACs?
we used to. We had the,
I think we do now.
Okay,
well, they on the tag, someone on
Yeah.
the tag.
and that was a mayor created.
Linda Davis, like one more, a part of the tag.
Yeah, okay.
Matter of fact, they only one tag that we got, which is up by
No,
Mr. Ball, they on that tag.
Well, that's a slightly different one too,
yeah,
Okay.
because that one's, the makeup of that is
it's a
different.
joint,
It's a joint, it
I
is,
think,
Yeah.
yeah,
it is.
we can
Because-
certainly look into
because the
that.
mall has two committees. They have the TAD, which is similar as its 5 other friends, but it also has the mall area redevelopment committee, which is half ACC and half school district, since they're a participating entity in that mall TAD. Okay, moving on to attendance, identifying that attendance by state law is generally in person, and that you can attend virtually twice in a calendar year with appropriate documentation and needs. So it's not just that Andrew's going to be at the beach, but rather, Andrew had knee surgery. But that virtual attendance does not account towards a quorum. So again, this just reflects what the changes in state law say. And then probably more notably absenteeism, which can be a problem, especially for people who maybe don't fully understand the level of commitment that's needed. This would say that there is a expectation for attendance. It's generally 50% of the prior meetings, kind of qualified two different ways. But if there's an attendance issue, it is not an automatic removal. It is a BAC vote. So if I stopped showing up and let's say I've just had a new baby and you all know that, there might be some grace that's extended by the other members of the board. However, if I stop showing up and nobody knows why and I'm not answering emails, the board can vote to remove that person as long as they've met those qualifications. And then that would be bonding, although there is later, we'll talk about an appeal mechanism. Moving to reappointments. So one of the things this group talked about was the challenges to the appointment process in general and the fact that it seems not efficient to do an all call for an appointment if you kind of know that somebody's likely to be reappointed. And so this describes a new process where you could have an expedited reappointment for your first reappointment. So if you were interested, you would notify folks, predominantly in the clerk and mayor's office. And then the mayor would put together a working committee to review those reappointments, and they would say yes or no. And if they say yes, that would go to the next available cycle for mayor and commission. So basically what it does is if somebody's going to be likely to be reappointed, they're not put into the all call. Now, if you've served 2 terms as a BAC member and you want to do a third, that's fine, but now you are going to be in the all call just to make sure that there's fresh eyes on everything.
So I was thinking of this scenario, 10 commissioners, the mayor appoints a 3-body team to say, I want to reappoint, Shanicia to, solid waste. So she did her first term and now she's applying for a second term. So let's say, this was running through my head and y'all just follow me here. So 5 commissioners like Shanicia, the other 5 don't like Shanicia. The mayor picks the 5 commissioners who do like Shanicia and she's automatically reappointed. So what happened to those other 5? They're like, well, I want Shamikia to be on the solid waste.
So they still have to go before the full mayor and commission to be approved. So it's really a matter of whether or not they're expedited into that process or if they're going to go. And then even if you're rejected, so let's say you go before you, I'm interested in the 3 commissioners that don't like me, or the mayor, mayor pro tem, and the 1 commissioner that don't like me.
Mhm.
Say, you know what, Andrew, we're not going to reappoint you. I can still apply during that all call to be reappointed and heard through the more traditional process.
So back up, let me get this to my, so, yeah, so it goes to the full commission for a vote. But if the 3-body team doesn't pick Shanicia,
Mhm.
she goes back through the process? Okay.
Then the process would open, because
Right.
prior to
Okay,
that,
there we go.
if that's the only opening on that position and they were selected for reappointment because the BAC said, yes, we'd like them, they're a good member, and that nominating committee said, yes, we'd like them to put them on, then that position wouldn't be advertised.
There we
at
go.
that
That
stage.
makes, okay.
But if they said no, one of those 2 said no, then it would be advertised, but they could still apply at that point.
Okay.
Does that make sense? There's a lot of like flow charts to
So
this.
we're just making sure that once it gets to the American Commission, we're not going back to this process.
I mean, in theory, you could, if you, in the same way that now, when you all vote on a slate, if y'all change your mind and voted to not approve somebody, then that would just be open at the next.
Yeah, it should be a carried forward vacancy.
Does that make
Yeah, I
sense?
see what
I
I'm
mean, you don't
getting
do
at
it,
though,
but.
like, if
Yeah.
we're gonna have to go through the process,
Yeah, I see, but I see how this process could.
not to pick on you, Shanice, I'm saying.
Yeah, I totally get it. You could get a committee appointed by the mayor that is, inclined towards one particular or inclined against one particular appointee. But it does have to have the full vote of the full commission. And, we typically vote on those all in one big slate, but somebody could make a motion to amend
Right.
that
Okay.
slate.
So if I was recommended for a reappointment by a favorable committee and then it came before the commission could vote to approve the slate minus Andrew for whatever BAC I'm in. And all that does is kick a vacancy over to the next cycle, which is basically what would happen now if you were presented a
Okay,
slate
right.
and voted to not approve Andrew. And then to the flip side, looking at the alternate, if the committee recommends not to expedite me, I can still throw my name in the hat through the open
Yeah,
all call.
okay.
And be right back.
Right.
Yeah, that's the only question I had.
Okay, so moving on to improved application process. We talk about filling them through cycles and that BAC members would apply for no more than 2 open positions, right? So if you're interested in serving, that's great, but you can't just say, well, I'll serve anywhere because you may not actually care about the pension or the airport or whatever it is that we're filling. So you just say, these are the top, up to 2 I'm interested in. If you're only interested in 1, that's great. Similarly, we do identify that the commission interviews, if they're not using a quorum, can be done virtually. So you don't have to be calling everybody into City Hall if you're not using a quorum of the mayor and commission or a standing committee. And that was based off of just making it easier for everybody. Now, you still can. Even if you're gonna do a non-quorum, you can say, I still want everybody to come in and interview in person. It just creates that flexibility. Okay, moving on, just noting right now, this is actually what's in, the top 2 are in ordinance now. So if you all felt like you wanted to go a different direction, you need to know now. So the housing authority membership's appointed by the mayor. And then the tax allocation district committees, all 6 of them are appointed by the mayor and affirmed by the commission. Now, let's keep in mind, those TADs were originally mayor's committees.
Yeah,
And then you all affirmed them, but the ordinance you adopted retains that the mayor would appoint them. Then the T-SPLOST advisory committees, or I'm sorry, oversight committees. Right now, commissioners nominate somebody from their district and then they're appointed by the mayor. So you have the option to sustain those as they currently practice, or if you wanted to bring forward a recommendation to change it, you could.
so this is where I get confused. The charter says the mayor can appoint these ad hoc committees.
Yes. Right.
So is there an order that says, so when you say change,
So
how can we change?
the 2 that, the tax allocation district committees, 6 hopefully becoming 1, they're in ordinance. So they're a tier 2 BAC. They're the equivalent of the hearings board now. What's unique is they started as a mayor's committee, which was exclusively the mayor's prerogative to appoint. And it just kind of carried over that it would still function in that way. So the ordinance says that the mayor will nominate or place people into the committee. So that actually is a completely different path than what we just talked about with
Yeah.
interviews and all calls. SPLOST and T-SPLOST being a new recommendation from this board. So as they exist today, they are but a mayor's committee. They've just been around for 20 years. So if you want to formalize them in ordinance, do you want to sustain that approach, or do you want to do all calls? And, one advantage to an all call is it's a competitive slate. One disadvantage is it's not proportional to districts. Whereas the way it works now, if there's an opening in my district, I say, Mayor, I would really like Jeff to be my representative, and I've talked with him, and so then the mayor says yes or no to that.
So in possibly consolidating those TAD committees into
Sure.
one, I'd suggest there be language in that consolidation that membership of that committee should consist of a representative who resides within each TAD. And that each of those representatives should be appointed by the mayor with the consent of the commissioners whose districts enter into that TAD. Does that make sense?
I like that. And Kelly did that for me with, my tabs. Somebody rolled off or quit or died. I don't think they died, Jesus. But, he called and he was just like, do you know, would you recommend someone who lives within the district? Within inner East Athens, not so much as Winterville. And so I kind of think Kelly does that.
Yeah, but it's not guaranteed.
But yeah, I mean, we can still put it in writing.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we consolidate it, we'll have the additional recommendation that there will be at least one member from each TAD, which will be nominated by the commissioners representing that TAD and affirmed by the mayor.
Yeah.
So what if you don't find somebody who lives within one of the TADs?
Well, it can be a business that operates in the
Business.
TAD. That's what we've done now, is somebody with a presence, so to speak.
Cause, well, she's on my tag.
Okay,
And I should note too, just kind of to your point, Commissioner Link, one thing that wasn't necessarily reflected in some of the discussion points or decisions we've made is that, we are working on some of those clarifications of ordinances for establishing of some of these BACs, particularly where they've been like, oh, a resolution, not a ordinance, those kinds of things.
okay, going back to mine again, so like my Lexington Road TAD, most of those businesses or corporations or business owners um, who operate out of Atlanta. We got, some of them are, and the residents are mostly working class, who probably won't be able to make it to a meeting. So I'm just concerned, like codifying that language, saying that it must live in a TAD, and when, like, what would happen if no one said, like, I'm interested?
Well, you could make it that is, lives or has a business in, which I think like the ADDA is as well, like,
Or even
one of them's a business that operates there, one's, I think, a resident, but, so I think you could probably do lives or owns. Some sort of works in there, maybe, yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
Andrew, does that create a conflict with the earlier requirement that they have to be a resident?
So technically, if that's considered a committee, no.
But they're not, they're a commission technically, because they've already an ordinance.
yeah,
I mean, it seems like you might want to leave the option, make that a requirement that they be a resident unless otherwise
Identified and,
approved or something. And
okay,
if you could have business, to your point, you could have business interests that are very interested in the TAD, but the business is there, but they actually are a resident there or something.
Or property owner.
It might be that if they're.
Yeah.
Put property on, because I got renters and I don't want any of my residents to be left out because I don't own.
You see that
Yeah.
somebody might have a particular, say they're an executive director of something here and they have an extra
Yeah.
thing, but they live someplace else and you would want them on a board.
Yeah,
so,
But Austin wouldn't, because a committee would technically still be appointed by the mayor if it was called a committee, even if it was identified as an ordinance, right?
I think that we've got some naming
Yeah.
issues.
yeah, I think the,
But if there's an ordinance authorizing that, I think it'd still be like a tier two, right? Like it.
Right,
Yeah.
that's generally ordinance, and then there's one or two that were affirmed by policy resolutions. I think Athens in Motion, is one, maybe, or one of the more recent ones that came forward. Which really we should just make an ordinance up and put it on the books. So going to Bob's point, flipping back to membership, which says BAC members must be residents of the county and must not have any past due implications. So what we could say is be residents of the county unless identified, exclusion is identified in ordinance.
Yeah.
And then in the TAD ordinance, you can
Use language that says
cast the net
significant
wider, right?
Okay. Oh, that's good.
Okay, so I think we're good there. Let's go to BAC member removal process. So there's really, we'll call it 5 ways, 4 enumerated ways that, you can be removed from a BAC before your term is up. So one is moving out of the, county unless your ordinance, will put in the language to exclude that. Second is failure to complete the training. Third is absenteeism with a vote from your board. And then the fourth is by referral. So if I'm just in a BAC and I am not contributing towards the work, my board can vote to have the commission recommend my removal, and then the commission still gets to decide whether or not to do that. The fifth one I would say is, it's the commission's prerogative that if they could get the mayor to put it on an agenda, they can remove any BAC member that they would prefer not to have representing us. So those are the 4, let's say, non-commission directed ways. But there's also language here that you have the opportunity to appeal. So let's say I complete the training, I get 95% done. I didn't answer the last question. The system shows me as not doing it. My liaison didn't communicate clearly with me. And next thing you know, I've gotten a letter that says, sorry, Andrew, you're done. And I'm like, well, what the heck? I completed your training. Oh, look, I didn't click the last button. I could just submit a letter to the commission that's saying, look, I'd like to appeal being removed, but hopefully we wouldn't get there, but just kind of having the checks and balances. If we're going to identify how somebody's removed, we should also give them some recourse if they feel like it's been unjust. And ultimately, those decisions reside with the commission.
I like it. Yeah.
So that you all would still make that decision,
Right,
not just the mayor, even if they got just from the letter.
right. Okay, next page, stipends. So again, locally created and controlled tier 2 would be a stipend. You all have recommended $25 per person per meeting with no more than 1 meeting per month and paid on a quarterly basis. So this is just to acknowledge that there is a cost, whether it's childcare or personal time. We ran some early numbers on that. I'll certainly put some in the commission report. It's going to be in the realm of $60,000 to $75,000 to do that at scale.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Do commissioners who serve on this board get?
No, sir, it's right here. And city staff highlighted.
I know you were already spending that $25.
Right. Where you get the full package?
So it only applies to appointed members. Okay, moving to social media. Jeff, do you want to talk us through a little bit about the social media approach here?
Yes, in a nutshell, our preference is to some degree that we use kind of official channels for social media components of it. There are challenges when it comes to elements of having more social media channels, whether it's some of the things that you have to leave as government agencies or just the management of it over the years. So what we've tried to do to some degree is discourage BAC social media outlets, but recognizing that there may be some instances where they have the opportunity to do that and need to do it. They can kind of put in a request for that. kind of run through the liaison, so we have somebody official who's been through training with us that knows some of the legal implications of those components. And to really try to keep it less advocacy and more educational components, but that it gave them an option for being able to develop one if they felt it was necessary, if the liaison had some capacity to do it, and basically to make sure we do it sort of how we treat kind of a department when they come to us asking about it. It's not our preferred method, but we have some ways in which if you find it completely necessary and us in the manager's office sort of agrees with that need, then there is a way to do it. That's kind of it in a nutshell.
Anyone have any questions?
No.
I like it.
Next page, website, similarly, we identify that you must use the ACC Gov website and it'd be updated by the staff liaison. Similarly, you cannot prepare something branded under ACC Gov or the BAC itself as an independent website unless explicitly authorized by the manager's office. So right now, I think the only one that exists in its own site is ACAT.
I believe the Greenway Commission might have one as well, but that may be Sandy Creek Nature Center. That's the one I'm thinking of. There's very few, and I can tell you after, many of you may not know that I created the original ACC Gov website in '99. So I've been involved with the website issues for a long time. And what we have found over the years is that we would find ones that would get established and then quickly, oh, someone forgot how to log in. Oh, the domain name expired. Oh, the information became out of date or directly contradicted things. So that's kind of over the years what some of our concerns with that. So I think ACAC is the only one, at least that's sort of functional. Community Tree Council had one, and then didn't, and then did again, and I think they now do not. But the ones that, like ACOC that's out there, those would sort of be grandfathered in for the time being until there was a need to kind of do that. This is really for sort of a moving forward.
And I think fundamentally, if a BAC was petitioning for their own website, we would want to know, well, what is it that you hope to gain from this site that we can't provide now, right? Because our website has a decent amount of functionality. You just have to be sure you're connecting the right tools into it. And so it may just simply be that once they connect communications for a recommendation, they figure out like, oh, well, we can already do that. And really it's just trying to head off unnecessary dispersal of it. And then if you'll take us into visual identity.
Just a little bit, basically, we try to work on some core visual identity components to try to have some comprehensive and consistent aspects to how ACC Gov and its various departments and things are portrayed. We're sort of working on some of that now. And this was just to put that in there so that if a BAC is looking to do some things, we know that they're looking to do some things and give them some guidance on how we generally would suggest doing these, or here's kind of our colors, here's our official logo that we use, that kind of thing. And as we're identifying that, it just gives them some direction to let us know. That's part of that.
That's good because that creates uniformity amongst the government. But any questions?
Okay, hopping over to next steps. So in our discussion today, I've heard three endorsed changes. One is on membership, having tier 2 membership reflect that of staff so that mayor and commission are not a BAC member unless it's identified in the ordinance that they would be a BAC voting member for tier 2s. So similarly with TADs, going with a little bit of a hybrid approach on appointment where membership would be at least one member from each TAD, when that could be somebody that lives in the TAD, has a business in the TAD, or other strong interest in the TAD, as recommended by the commissioners involved with that TAD. So there could be two, if our TADs touch 3 commission districts anywhere, and approved by the mayor or appointed by the mayor. And then I had another note about membership. I think it might have been the TAD membership, the out-of-county membership will just read, you should not be an out-of-county resident unless your ordinance enabling the BAC explicitly identifies that. And I would say at this point, on first pass, that would be TADs. Just because of some business interest or, you may have a really active, like we said, nonprofit or somebody who runs a business in the TAD, doesn't own it, but they're a champion of that area.
Mhm.
They might live on the other side of town or just over the border.
Okay, and the next step, should we talk about the process of BACs? Like Gene was sending out 2 weeks and then we got 2 weeks to fill them. Then there's like,
I think we should wait till we get a clerk hired and consult.
We've started that process, so yeah.
I
okay,
believe the next timeframe is,
October 24th, 2025 will be the next advertisement. And then the selection date is scheduled for November 13th, and the application due date is November 7th. And then have interviews tentatively scheduled for November 20th.
but yeah, I would like to talk about that whole process.
Yeah, well,
Like, but we can
I think-
move it forward.
if, if we get a new clerk who, and have them go through the existing process, then maybe they can suggest
Cause this
more
was one of the
efficiencies to it.
biggest things
I'm
that,
sure that there's technology out there that
Same
can
here.
help that process,
Yeah.
someone with that expertise.
For sure.
but that process was one of the biggest things that other commissioners was complaining about.
Yeah.
That brought this.
Yeah, we all are.
Yeah.
So we send this, we'll have another reiteration of BACs just with the process.
Yeah.
Well, y'all are making some recommended changes to the process now, so you've got a process, if this was carried
Yeah.
forward, process for reappointment. On the appointments themselves or the applications, you would have an online application where you're picking up to 2 that you're interested in, and then the opportunity to do virtual appointments if needed, virtual interviews. So I think that helps to remove some of the bumps in the road, and there may be others that the clerk's office recommends, and I don't look at the attorney awkwardly here. If staff wanted to recommend an update to the manual, they could. The commission would have to kind of affirm it, but so if a new clerk gets in and says, look, I want to identify some edits to this process, and we're gonna do it every 2 months instead of every 3 months. That could be brought forward back to the commission without committee work if.
and I
Okay.
think some of that level of detail is kind of purposefully not spelled out in the manual to allow that flexibility, like,
Okay,
it doesn't say 3 times a year in this date, this date, this date, because of the concern about putting that level of detail in the manual, so that you can change stuff like that, basically more on a policy kind of thing.
So if you all were comfortable recommending the manual edits with the revisions we discussed today, those 3 areas. What would come forward to the full mayor and commission would be the revised manual. The recommendation for a stipend to begin in FY 27. And a recommended of the conceptual changes to those tier 2 BACs. And so if the commission accepts those recommendations, the FY 27 would be a budget discussion item, so it's pending the commission approving that budget and starting in FY 27. The manual would go live at that point. And the changes to BACs would then go back and be workshopped, the actual ordinances between the attorney's office and staff. So for example, what ordinance is gonna come forward for the 6 TADs, or what are we gonna do? Where are we gonna put the ordinance, and where is it gonna be identified for SPOS, T-SPOS oversight? And those would each come back to the commission when they're baked as standalone items, and we would just say, on this date, the commission affirmed GOC's recommendation for this, and here's the ordinance, and here's what it does. So the question is, are you ready to let the baby bird out of the nest, or there?
This one, one commissioner to reach out to me want to know, I know we had talked about trying to narrow the number of BAC.
Mhm.
I didn't know what we had came to. I don't know what that number, I couldn't answer that question. What number
Go back like
we got?
two.
I mean, we can, so if you look at tier twos, I happen to have my list here from before. Count these up real quick, but
We got rid of,
I know.
people, not people alone, persons with disabilities and combine that with HRC. We're reducing the TAD from 6 to 1. Solid waste, cash, ECB stays the same. The pension board, the deferred comp stays the same. So pretty much that's it.
Well, the construction board,
And the construction board goes to the state.
Okay. So again, okay, that's just prepare us, it's gonna come up when we start discussing.
So effectively, if you look at this list, under the April 21st, you are consolidating 5 fewer. You're gonna 6 TADs to 1, and then pension board, or not pension boards, construction board of appeals and people commission on disabilities. And then you're adding 1. 5 fewer, 7 fewer. So you're adding an official SPLOST, T-SPLOST oversight.
Yeah.
And
And we may get some push, we're gonna get pushed back on 2 things, so we just, again, the tag, pushback about combining
yeah,
and the advisory. So again, and we'll discuss that on the commission, but there's gonna be some pushback.
I'm gonna plant a few seeds here while I have the opportunity for SPLOST, T-SPLOST oversight. We just had a work session where everybody was talking about the opportunity to expedite things. Right now, there is a lot of kind of day-to-day stuff that comes back to the commission over and over. It could be that you all take a higher level of approval around budget and concept and leave that nuts and bolts work to your oversight committee, thereby reducing the amount of time that's taken to bring these things back for you. So that's one thing that I think we'd like staff to investigate.
But that's what school district does.
I think so too.
It does that streamline.
That's what
Make it
school
more
district does.
efficient.
They oversight committee, but handle all the nuts and bolts, and it gets back to them.
Right.
That's why they got the oversight. So yeah, so it can work if we're willing to work with it, so.
So that would have to be an approved a commission, right? And the manager's office bringing back a process that makes sense that you all buy into, but it does create
And
that.
you're just trying to prepare us for some of the debates.
So if we get, which will probably, the stipends, if we get, the pushback for the stipends because of how much it is, to the budget, can we just strike the stipend and move forward with everything else, or do we have to come back to the table and just kind of rearrange?
Well, that's up to you all behind the rail, right? So once you make the recommendation, it's gonna go to the full peers. It can be a recommendation to accept, like, you know, they can just move forward with your recommendations. The second is that they could do reject and just say, go work on it some more. Or it could be, we want to accept items 2 and 3 and
Yeah.
hold conversation on item 1. They'll each be their own kind of enumerated action.
I hope our colleague,
I don't know, HRC is very critical of GLC.
okay.
You down with GOC? Okay, a motion to move forward.
all the,
All in favor? So we only have a few minutes left in our meeting. And BACs are somewhat done. They'll get a new clerk of commission. And we have a few topics. So Jesus, the 6-year-long proverbial leasing policy is due, I think it's due in July of 2025. Cause that's how long we extended it, correct?
What now?
The update on the benefits of leasing
Oh,
policy.
yeah.
I've been working on that. I would like to present some things. I think I sent it to you a year ago, but I have to double check.
I'm gonna need you to reset it.
But for the next topic, would y'all like to discuss enhanced rental protections, ACC Employment Engagement Survey Support. And I have some ideas for ACC Employee Engagement and Support as well. So,
I mean, we probably need to work on that leasing policy, because.
yeah,
Nonprofits that rent from us need to get their budget, start their budget work for the following year.
Yeah.
They need to know if they're gonna be paying rent or not.
so next topic will be leasing policy.
Okay.
Get ready for those phone calls and emails.
Nonprofits,
Yeah.
Yeah,
they want to go up on their rent.
all right. Anything else?
I have a quick question, and then I guess it's not be short too. As far as, once someone leaves a BAC and is no longer a part of it, who deactivates their email or their access to the ACC website?
So normally what happens, well, they don't have necessarily any access to the website per se, well, to the,
Email.
to the, training system.
Mm-hmm.
But for the email, what would normally happen is the liaison would either let me know or copy me and let IT know, and then they would remove it from there.
Okay, because I know they send it to me once they leave. I didn't know if any, so you're aware of it too, so.
You can never be 100% sure of that, but if you wanted to let me know if you hear it, just to make sure that I know about it.
Well, and long ago, younger in my career with more hair, the clerk's office was kind of the final resting place of what official membership was, because every now and then you might have some records that. So if that's something that the clerk's office is going to continue to do, they getting looped in on those communications about like the training and so on would also allow them to flag like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
Andrew resigned last month. He needs to be struck from our system.
Right,
So that would certainly be an opportunity to improve that once we.
okay,
And I would say, we'd be open for potentially transitioning kind of out of some of the BAC realm as well,
mhm.
just out of necessity, been involved with that more.
Do we use any software product to manage that?
Mm-mm.
Because there's some very cost-effective ones that are a package of, it's not the ideal one, but it's the same provider as the website provider. It's like $15,000 something to manage.
Civic Plus?
Yeah, it's a Civic Plus extension. I don't know, it's called Board Docs or one, it's got some name.
Yeah, there are several of them.
Because it's hard to keep
out
track
there.
of when people are rolling off.
Yeah.
Does other stuff too, but at least that minimal stuff. So.
Might be time for a demo.
Yeah,
There are several of them out there, so yeah.
and from GLT, any other discussions or topics or concerns?
No, great job, team.
It's good.
Motion to adjourn.
There we go. All in favor?